to Getting Past the Premium, everybody. We are very excited to have with us today Bradley Flowers. Bradley is the founder of Portal Insurance, as well as the co-host of the Insurance Guys podcast. So he's very familiar with what we're doing today, and I think he can give us a lot of insight on what he's doing in his firm and what he hears from other people in the industry. And so we're very excited to bring this episode to you, and enjoy.
Welcome to the Getting Past the Premium podcast, where we focus on breaking down risk management problems bit by bit until we find a solution. If you would like to discuss anything you hear on GPP with us, please reach out using the links in the description. Enjoy today's episode.
All right, man. What's going on? Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. I'm very happy to be here. Like I said, I never say no to a podcast. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, like I told you before, this is the first virtual Getting Past the Premium. So if we run into some issues, we'll just run with it, right?
Well, this is my first podcast ever, so
yeah,
good.
Yeah, right. Well, that is a good segue into maybe give everybody the down low on who you are and not only your company but also the podcast. And
yeah, so I started in the industry in 2011-ish, 2012, something like that. Doing life insurance for Liberty National.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with that company, most people work there about 6 months.
Yeah.
I worked there for about 6 months, and then the second 6 months I spent trying to find a job in PNC because I recognized that that's really where it was at least for kind of how I like to operate. Went to work for a company called Alpha Insurance, which is essentially Alabama's version of Farm Bureau. When I was at Alpha, I had no money, and I was given the reins to this agency that I had to presumably run and grow and that sort of thing. And there's two ways to beat your competition when it comes to marketing. You either have to outspin them or you have to out-strategize them, or both. You have to do one of those two things or both. And I could not outspin my competition. My competition at the time was doing billboards and radio and TV and newspaper and that sort of thing. All that's super expensive. And this was right when social media was starting to be used for business in a small Main Street mom and pop business sense. I remember having friends that I would have to convince them to create a Facebook business page. Like this is, it's 2013, I believe, 13 or 14. And so I started going all in on social media on Facebook because I realized, one, my competition wasn't there. Two, it was free. And three, we didn't really have any compliance around it at the time. And my competition did. And so I started going all in on social media. It sort of made me fall in love with technology. I had never growing up been super tech savvy. Sort of fell in love with technology, creating content, putting myself out there. Started getting recognized in the local community as like the insurance guy who does stuff on Snapchat and all that kind of stuff. I'm shortening a lot. I'm compressing this pretty heavily. And then from there, the one kind of avenue of social media that I had never, and we did good at the agency. We grew it, made a lot of money, that sort of thing, was sort of semi-captive, which is a lot of captives say semi-captive to make themselves feel better. But we were captive we had some independent contracts. So I kind of knew that world a little bit, and met my co-host Scott on Snapchat actually. And host of my podcast. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And he reached out to me, and we met up and did some videos and stuff. And he was like, man, we're kind of good together. We should do a podcast. He and I are so different that it works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's like, we should do a podcast. And so I said, and that was kind of the one form of social media that I hadn't done. So I kind of said yes, just to check the box. I told him, I was like, if you pay for it, I'll do it. And so he's like, okay. So we started, and we started it as a mechanism to get connected with people that we wanted to be connected with. If you and I call some thought leader in our industry as everyday agents, they're and asked to pick their brain, they may or may not say yes. But if we call and ask them to be on our podcast, they're 100% of the time going to say yes.
So
You're all of a sudden the high school kid who was the nerd growing up, but now you're hosting the party and you're cool. Yeah. And all the pretty girls are at your house. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what happened. It's that. And so we would interview people like Tom Hegna, Chris Paradiso, Troy Korsgaard. And I remember I was reading Power Position my wife was reading Power Position Your Agency, which is one of like the best sold PNC books ever by Troy Korsgaard, and who's now a really good friend of mine. And I told my wife, I was like, what if we interviewed him on our podcast? She's like, he's not going to do your podcast. 30 minutes later, he was like, yeah, I'll do it because of that same factor. Right. So we started it that way, but what inadvertently, and it was selfish, but what inadvertently happened is because we're interviewing these thought leaders and these big players in the industry, people started listening. So it kind of took off. So essentially for like a year and a half, I got an MBA in how to run an independent agency. And I would try to implement things that I learned at my captive company, and I would be hit with a lot of red tape or pushback or whatever. I had a CSR quit one time, and I kid you not, this is what she quit over. She quit over me asking her when somebody calls in to schedule an appointment with me, instead of sending them through to me, just schedule the appointment. So like that's how 15 years behind we were. And I was trying to implement super basic stuff that I would learn, and I would be met with a ton of pushback. And so I said, screw it, I'm going to go out on my own. And so I started in January of 2019. I quit that company and I opened March the 1st. So next week is our 3-year anniversary. It seems like it's been 30 years. I don't know if that's good or bad. Yeah. Started Portal Insurance. We are a traditional independent agency that uses technology to enhance our customer experience and make it super easy for people to do business with us. The podcast kind of fuels the agency kind of fuels the podcast, and it's this big thing, I guess. And then in addition to that, I have a digital marketing company that we do content creation for insurance agents. So those are kind of my 3 things: the podcast, the marketing company, the insurance agent, with the insurance agency being like Scott and I are very clear that like we are insurance agents who happen to have a podcast, not the other way around. The insurance agency is where I make my money at. The other stuff just benefits that.
Totally.
That's awesome. Yeah, congrats, man. 3 years. That's a big deal.
It's been difficult, but it's been fun.
Oh yeah. Totally. Well, and it's probably been fun to actually build it along with having these conversations and learning what you're learning and kind of implementing some of that stuff from the ground up.
Hell yeah. Like, I mean, if you have an issue in an agency, I can call one of our podcast guests that we've interviewed that's been an expert in that field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes here's what I tell people is, and we do make some money from the podcast with sponsors and that sort of thing, but nothing to write home about. But what I tell people, so like people that write books will tell you that there's no money in books. The money comes where the book is a door opener. The book gets you in different rooms. That's what the podcast is. The podcast is my book. It's my door opener that allows me to have the seat at some tables that I 1000% do not deserve to have seats at. For sure. Like we're sitting there and it's like the CEO of this company, the CEO of this company, the program administrator of this company. I'm like, and a redneck from Alabama sitting there and like wearing a t-shirt and skinny jeans. So it definitely has to, but you know, at the same time, like we have a lot of ears in the industry listening to us. So there is some, you know, they want us there because there is some influence there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that might actually spark kind of my first maybe question for you around thinking about starting your company, Portal, and all of the things you're learning on the podcast. What were some of the most impactful things that kind of jump out to you that you learned from these thought leaders on the podcast and were able to apply as you're building Portal?
That is a very good question. Probably, honestly,
I get one in like 5 episodes, dude. I get a good question.
Yeah, probably like probably technology, to be completely honest with you. Not only like knowing what technology to use, but just to be completely honest, being able to negotiate some discounts with some of that technology is like what I did when I started my agency is I put a business plan together and I had, budgets for different line items. And then I would go to each one of those vendors and be like, hey, I'm starting this agency. I'm going to talk about how I'm starting on the podcast. What kind of discount can you give me? I'll unashamedly tell you, like I did, like, and that helps us. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So probably from that, and then being able to like, beta test some stuff that maybe we normally wouldn't be able to get into in that regard. And then probably too, it's definitely helped with carrier contracts for sure. Cause we're all direct. We're not a part of an aggregator or anything like that. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the hard way. And then I can fall back on an aggregator if I want to. Nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of friends that run aggregators. Because so what happened is I would call some of these reps and either they would be like, is this Bradley from the Insurance Guys podcast? Because a lot of them listen to it too. Or it would be like a guest that would introduce me. You know what I'm saying? So those kind of two things are probably the big, as far as like one lesson. I mean, there's been so much I couldn't put my finger on 10 lessons, let alone one or two.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sweet. It's kind of a cool example of coming up with something different that you saw value in and didn't know you would. You don't know some of those things until you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that the agency would not be here if it wasn't for the podcast, but definitely the agency would not be as successful if it wasn't for the podcast, for sure.
Yeah.
But we created it too at the same time. So it's not like, you know what I mean? It would be different. Absolutely. It would be different if we didn't create it. You know what I'm saying? Like we created the podcast and then that's what led to that. So I kind of don't mind admitting that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's part of your story.
Can do the same thing,
Yeah.
Totally. So Ryan, I was going to go to, and maybe you could jump in on the customer experience that Bradley mentioned. That's something we spend a lot of time talking about on this show, Bradley, because I think our industry overlooks client experience a lot. We're
the worst at it.
Oh my gosh, it's kind of gets frustrating for us when we have these. So, example, we just had a gal on. She's a loan officer. Sells mortgages basically, and we're talking to her about her client experience, and it's phenomenal. She sells one deal to a client maybe once every 7 years, and she is just dynamite and keeping in touch with them, building the relationship, all this. And we're going, we have recurring revenue with our clients and we are terrible about client experience. And Ryan has put a lot of thought into that from our perspective, but maybe start there about how you approach client experience, customer experience in Portal and some of the top things you've learned from there.
So the number one thing is recognizing that your customer does not want to be dealing with you.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk to the insurance guy. Like you are at the recognizing that you are not the highlight of their day. Okay. Yeah. Because what happens, so I'm going to tell you a story. Okay. I've never told this story. When I went to work for, I'm not going to say which company, when I went to work for one of the companies I went to work for, we had a client that I was warned about day one. Stay away from her. Don't engage. She comes in because we would help. I was pretty customer centric, so I would help with like if somebody came in to pay a bill and I didn't want them to wait, I'd take I'll help her, take her bit, like it was like day one, literally. Every time she came in, it was a fight. I mean, button heads. Eventually she left. Okay. I have an interesting benefit for my perspective on the industry, because my wife runs a captive agency separate from the one that I worked at, different company. It's next door to my old office. She went to my wife's agency. I kid you not. I kid you not. And I told my, I was, hey, you better look out. I kid you not. When she walks in the door, she hugs everybody she sees. She's invited to the company Christmas parties. She brings food. And I just had a baby 5 months ago. We considered her to be the nanny for the child.
No way.
And all that happened is, and I don't know this for sure, but if I had to guess, all that happened is she's coming in the office at the old agency, probably already having a bad day. And now she's got to deal with the dang insurance man. And instead of being empathetic towards that, the staff probably pushed back. And from then on, it was a battle. So when I think about customer experience, yes, there's all this technology out there that you can use, that we use, that enhance it. But I think customer experience is recognizing where you stand in the totem pole of your client's brain when it comes to dealing with you. And if we can recognize as insurance agents that most people don't want to deal with us, then it allows us to understand that we're not necessarily getting the best of every single client. And we can be a little bit empathetic towards that. And then the customer experience starts from there. So that's kind of how I think about it. If I have to put it in a literal sense, it's making it as easy as freaking possible for your customers to do business with you. That is a true story. That is 100% true. I actually have a keynote presentation I'm putting together around that. So
it's amazing.
Hey, well,
does the old company know?
They do now.
Yeah.
If they listen to GPP,
if they listen. But no, they probably don't. They probably don't, because I have a good buddy. His name is Nas, and he sold it, but he used to own a smoothie franchise. And you think of something like, if you think about insurance, like what we're doing is way more important than smoothies, right? But it's not, because the way he used to train his team to treat their customers, and he told me this, is you treat every customer like they are about to commit suicide. And the last thing they are doing is coming to get their favorite smoothie. And your attitude could change that.
Wow.
That's how you treat. And it's like with life insurance, right? Every successful life insurance person will tell you, treat every customer like they're going to die at midnight that night. If you did, you would not have problems selling life insurance. It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So be empathetic towards your customer, understand their frustrations. And a lot of times, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times you get that customer being a real a-hole. A lot of times, if you just kind of, I'm not saying let yourself get berated or cussed out, or there is a line, right?
Empathize
but a lot of times,
them.
if you hear them out and empathize with them and let them vent, they end up being your best customers, because they got it out. You heard them out. You solved their problem, and they probably feel bad for treating you like an a-hole. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or being an a-hole to you. And now they're going to be super nice. That's happened to me more times than I can count. Yeah. That's kind of how I think about customer experience. I'm glad you asked that question, because I've been wanting to test that out, but without actually doing it, Yeah.
I was on the receiving end of that. I was a customer, called a business in Georgia that I had sent some product to get fixed up. And I called to check on it. He's an old school guy, kind of a specialty in his field. And he just let me have it. He goes, I cannot get to your work with the phone that just won't stop ringing, and you're part of that problem, and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, dude, I've sent you $1,000 worth of cash and material, and I'm just looking for a status update. Yeah. But, I didn't. I listened to him, and he started to tell me about how the cable company shut off his, or not cable company, his electric company shut off his electricity because his bill pay didn't go through. I disarmed him, empathized with him, and I'm like, dude, I'm in no way asking you to hurry up or anything. I was just asking for an update. I appreciate, what you're doing, and I know you're working hard and everything else. And we got to the end of that, and he goes, what's your name? I told him, I said, Ryan Bratton. He goes, no problem. I'm going to run to the back. He goes, I just completely unloaded with you, and I'm calmed down now. I'm going to move you to the front of the line, and let's rock and roll.
Yep.
And, I was like, that could have went down. So if I thought for a second that I was a client, I was entitled to something,
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of the opposite story, but I think, where I want to take this, I guess, Bradley, is like, we're not talking about rocket science here, but it seems to be rocket science in the risk management space.
Yeah.
Because, we've got something that everyone needs. So we've got this attitude,
They don't want to buy it.
They don't want to buy it. And then they really don't understand it. So they don't get how it works. And they're pissed that they have to buy it. And so they want a better deal. And they're not really looking to take your recommendations because it's just an upsell, on and on and on and on. How can we leverage like your story and bringing empathy back into, I shouldn't even say back, but like to this industry to try to change the narrative on, you're walking into a flower shop and it's going to be a phenomenal experience and you're going to be happy that you're here versus what I just described?
I think it's recognizing, I think it's recognizing that you never know what's going on in their life that's causing the behavior that you're getting or going to get, whether it be good or bad, combined with knowing who your target client is. When Portal screws up on something, whether it be a customer experience or a policy, whatever, it's usually because we wrote someone that's not our target client or not in our niche, to be completely honest with you.
Yep.
So my ops guy here is a former manager at Chick-fil-A. I don't have to explain why it's a good thing to hire a former Chick-fil-A manager when you're talking about customer experience. I have a video that Chick-fil-A uses internally that they show people there, and it's got all these people at the counter. Some of them are mad, some of them are happy, and a little bubble pops above their head, and it says like, husband just diagnosed with cancer. Daughter's failing school. Like, it shows what's going on in their life, and it basically teaches you, and it's super dramatic. It can make you choke up a little bit. But it teaches you to like, hey, look, let's empathize with these people as to what's actually going on in their life. And then we won't take it so personal. You know what I mean? Combined with, I think, man, just to answer your question, I mean, that's a big question. I think it's just knowing your target client, knowing what they need, knowing what they want, and then being willing to innovate in your agency and being willing to, hey, let's look at this piece of technology to complement the customer experience to make it a little bit easier for people to do business with us. I'll never forget when COVID first happened. I saw an agent, but this one agent post in a group is like, hey, how do I use DocuSign? And I'm like, why are you not already doing that? Like, you're literally you're choosing to make it difficult for people to do business with you. You know what I mean? But it's a big question, man. I don't have all the answers. All I know is what we do, and it seems to be working. And we're not perfect. You know what I mean? We have upset customers, and we have people we can't help, and we have bad days. I have bad days as the customer. Me and my wife went out to dinner or went to lunch last Saturday, and I was getting hangry. I was in a bad mood. I wasn't rude or anything, but it was just, we've all had those moments.
Yeah, totally. So have you at Portal, can you kind of point to, or maybe give us an example of something that you've implemented because if I could sum up what you're talking about, really what we're talking about is building relationships on a deeper level.
Uh-huh.
Like, what are some of the things that you're doing internally to try to do that, going against kind of the industry norms, if you will?
So this is going to surprise you. And in fact, this black thing you see right here on my wall, that's the side of a picture of a carrier telling me they weren't going to appoint me because we do this, which is going to make you laugh. We text all of our customers. My phone's not ringing right now. We get an exponentially small amount of phone calls compared to the size of our book of business. Because when we onboard our customers, we onboard all of our customers through text message. What that does is it subliminally tells them, hey, if I need something, I can text this person. Here's the thing. The texts are not written in a way And it's not meant to be impersonal. They're written in a way like we let that producer help write the text. So they think they're texting that person, and in some cases they are. And so what happens is all my customers have me right here on my phone. They all have me right there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, hey, I need something. I'm just going to text Bradley. I'm done. But here's the thing that may seem impersonal, but that's how they communicate with all their friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
if we were in a room of 400 people and I said, how many people would be annoyed if they got a phone call right now? A bunch of people, you know what I mean? So for us, it's
How many people are getting text messages? Everybody.
yeah, it's exactly like, so we text our customers heavily. Now we pick up the phone and call them if, you know, I mean, obviously when it comes down to it, but that's been a huge game changer for us. Like we've had so many clients that have left us because we're in a difficult market in general right now in the industry, as you guys know, but I'm in a coastal market. So it's kind of crazy. We've had clients that leave us that come back and we ask them why they come back. And they're like, because I can just text you guys and you'll take care of it. Like I have you right here. You know what I mean? But we have systematized in a way where it connects to our management system. It's not on our cell phones and that sort of thing. That's been huge for us. Huge. I cannot explain it. Another thing that's been really big for us is the utilization of an app that we use called Glovebox that that has all of our client data and that sort of thing. The clients love that. You know, speaking of personal lines, like if you have ever written a client from Geico and you ask them what they like about Geico, 99% of them are going to say the app. So that's been huge. And then lastly, so Kenneth, our ops guy, looks at every single renewal. I'm not going to tell you that he calls every single renewal because he does it. Every single renewal goes through his desk. We have a pipeline online that we use to manage that, and he communicates with people if there's an issue. He picks up the phone and calls them. We are a little bit liberal in our remarkets. We're willing to help people remarket and that sort of thing. So just honestly, like if our agency has one problem, it's over communication, but that's one way that we separate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and kudos to you guys. I mean, that's I mean, you can tell that you've done, and it might be because, you know, a lot of these insurance agencies are battling 100+ years of doing the same thing the same way, and they just can't get out of their own way. And you've had the luxury of, you know, I don't mean to downplay that, but like 3 years ago, you know, you built it the way that you wanted to build it. And
I tested it so the captive agency I came from, there would be days where we would take, I don't want to say the number because I don't want them to get robbed, but like we would take a lot of cash, a lot of walk-in pays. And so I learned like the wrong way, the unprofitable way to do it. You know what I mean? So when we started Portal, it was, you know, pay in full EFT. We're not going to make our customers do it. We're going to target the customers who want to do it that way.
yeah.
The very distinct difference.
Totally.
Pay in full EFT. We don't take cash. We'll let you come in the office and pay. You know how many people we have that do that? That many. You know, we're going to utilize text message. That's how people want to communicate anyway, even if they don't want to say that. You know, we're going to set it up so it's very low service for us, and then incorporate some good customer experience touch points and things like that in there, and then be there when our customers need us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what is your target market, if you don't mind sharing? Because I think that, again, this is something that you've mentioned several times now, and I would guess, and maybe you can give your thoughts too, but it's a minority of companies or agencies in our industry have a defined target market.
Yep.
And
So
so what does it look like for you guys? And then we can expand on that.
from a type of business standpoint,
Yeah.
on the personal line side, pretty much the only thing we do are lender referrals. That's it. Very rarely are we swapping someone over from another company. Usually it's a lender referral. We will always do that. We are the best in Mobile County at that, and probably in Alabama at that. I will unequivocally tell you we are really good at that. We'll always have a department that does it. On the commercial side, we specialize in habitational real estate investors. We specialize in trucking, and then we like to do Main Street businesses, barbershops, restaurants, that sort of thing. We're getting ready to build out a niche in restaurants right before COVID, so thankfully we didn't get that one started. But we do some restaurants now, so that's kind of it as far as niche goes. Here's the type of customer we want. We want the person that doesn't necessarily expect us to explain every single coverage to them. They want to pay us and trust that we're acting in their best interest and will be there when they need us, and are willing to use some technology to help that. That's about it.
Yeah,
I don't want grandpa, no offense to grandpas out there. I don't want the person that's probably a bad way to say that. I don't want the person, so my wife's agency is completely opposite. My wife's agency, she wants you to come in. She wants you to get a Coke. She's going to put her arm around you and sit there and talk, that sort of thing. That's not our jam. I want professional. I want myself. Like, I want people who are busy professionals that are too busy to come sit down at the insurance office, and they just want me to be their guy and we'll handle it. Yeah. That's what we're looking for. People who don't have time usually have money.
That's very true.
So
it's interesting.
And then I have it more. We're on EOS. I don't know if you guys are familiar with EOS. Yep. So we have I have the list of every single niche, and we have it broken down: physiological, psychological, demographic, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to bore you with all that info, but we do have it kind of, business owner wise, we want someone who's like a legitimate business owner that doesn't try. One of our sayings is we want commercial clients who don't step over dollars to pick up pennies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We want them, it needs to be run like a business. And we do a lot of startups, and we help coach them up to that point. You know what I mean? For example, we have an intake form that we use that all new business comes through, that we're not writing it down when somebody calls in, we're filling it out.
Yep.
It says on there, what's your EIN? Every insurance agent listening to this has quoted a startup business and they don't have an EIN yet. I have the link on there to get the EIN. So we'll actually do it for them.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, you don't have an EIN, but here, I'll get that for you. Boom, boom, done. I don't know if we're supposed to do that or not, but we're doing that. So, we want people who are doing things the right way. We have one big client. I'm not going to say which niche it's in. That the account was an absolute crap show, and we took it over, and they had $1 million of claims after Hurricane Sally. And when they got their renewal, it was like, hey guys, look, we have a renewal offer for you, but we're not going to give it to you unless we have to do these things this way. Like, this is how this relationship's going to go. Otherwise it's unprofitable for us.
Yeah.
So we were able to get them to agree. You know what I mean? So it's just knowing exactly who you want and knowing how they should operate. And to be honest with you, the times that we've broken that, it's bit us in the butt,
Totally.
And how did you get the confidence, Bradley, to get to that point? Right. I think I'm sure it's your battle wounds, right, that we talked about, but I'd like to get your perspective on that, because a lot of people don't have, call it whatever you want, but they just can't tell a business, listen, this is the way that a relationship with us is going to work. It's for your benefit, right? Yeah. And we can add more value to your situation, but you got to trust us on this and let us help you out.
There's a few ways. One, this is kind of the answer to this. A question I get a lot from agency owners is, hey, you've completely removed yourself from selling. You're the CEO of your agency. I don't call myself that, but you're basically like running the agency from a CEO standpoint, and you have other people selling. How did you get to that point? And I tell them the first thing you should do, that good feeling you get when you move the account to sold in your management system or your CRM, or you take the money or whatever, get over that. Okay. It's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us work with accounts we should not work with just because we want to sell. Now, earlier today, I was talking to an agency owner who was about to go independent, and I spent 50 minutes on the phone with him over lunch. And I told him, I was kind of going through some of this, and I told him, I was like, look, your first year, I completely understand you're going to write everybody that breeds. You kind of have to. It would be really, really hard to open a scratch agency, especially with the small amount of money that I opened mine with, and say we're only going to write contractors, or you know what I mean. So I think for me, it's the fact that I almost start with the end and I go backwards. Like, what's it going to be like if we write this Scott? I don't know if I can cuss on here, but Scott calls them shitbird clients. Like, how is this going to go? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I look at it the other way. Like, okay, yeah, we could write this excavation contractor, but like, we really don't specialize. How's this going to go 3 months from, you know what I mean? Like I almost remove the emotion of getting that sale. And now I'm not saying we don't try other niches every now and then just to see kind of maybe this is a vertical we want to go into. So it's that. It is I lost my train of thought, but basically just removing the emotion from that. And when you're profitable, that's the thing. Like once you get to that first year or two and you're profitable and you're making money and your model is proving itself, you can walk away from deals, being willing to walk away from deals, knowing that they're not worth it. The beautiful thing about our industry is even if you look at a $150,000 policy, that's just 15 grand. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like you're making $1 million, right? Like our industry, even when you look at like middle market commercial, it's about volume. No one deal is making or breaking your year, generally speaking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So looking at it that way, it's like, it's a lot easier to walk away from stuff it's not doing it the right way. And to be completely honest with you, like this thing's my baby. The worst part about running an independent agency is everything is on your shoulders. And I'm obsessed with there not being any issues in an E&O regard or whatever, Yeah.
Yeah. I think, as you were talking, one of the most important things I think that everybody to think about is like, you didn't necessarily answer that question with, oh, my target is, habitational, but they got to have 800 units and this and that, blah, blah, blah. It was more of the soft stuff, right? I want them to engage with me this way. I want them to have this type of a relationship. And there's no right answer to that for everybody. It's you have to decide what you want that to look like for your agency, for your demographic, for your types of clients, and then go out and only write those people. I was just listening to Carruthers the other day. I was joking with Ryan. I'm like, he got on a tangent on one of them, and he's like, if you want to go after $5,000 to $20,000 accounts, and you only have $5,000 to $20,000 accounts in your pipeline, and you only have markets to write $5,000 to $20,000, all you're going to write is $5,000 to $20,000. Like it was a 5-minute long rant, and he was just going off on it. But it's so true because you set up everything intentionally to do that, and guess what's going to come out the other end? Those types of right?
And it's like I this past week. So there's a client that was a client of mine at my captive company. And he reached out for a quote. This would be the third time we've quoted him. And each time he kind of, and we offer, good policies, good rates. He kind of hem hauls, and he reaches out to me about a week ago today. And he's like, hey, I'm buying a rental house. Here's the address. We quote it. I send him the quote. And he said, I was like, okay, you ready to get it going? He's like, no, I'm going to price check you first. I said, okay. I said, that's fine. I said, but if we're not able to come to a deal this time, I'm not going to be able to, like, this is it.
Yeah.
And this guy's very direct, which I like.
Yeah.
I can be. And so he appreciated that. He called me back 10 minutes later. He said, they told me it'd be tomorrow before. Well, let me back up. So he calls me. And I was like, okay, let me put you in touch with Ken. He was like, no, hell no. I called you. I was like, okay, well, look, like, I don't really sell, but I'll tell you what, I'll send it to him. He can quote it. He can send it back to me and I'll give you basically. He's like, okay. So then fast forward, he calls me back 10 minutes later and he's like, hey, they told me it'd be tomorrow before they could get me the quote back. And I said, you know why? Right. He said, why? I said, remember that Kenneth guy you didn't want to talk to? He's like, yeah. I said, they don't have one of those.
Yeah. They
don't have a Kenneth. It's just one person you're talking to. And so he was like, okay. He's like, well, go ahead and write it up tomorrow. I said, hey, go ahead and send me all your other interests, all your other stuff too. I used that example in a training with my team last week because it wasn't, would you mind if I quote all you? Hey, go ahead and send me all your other stuff too. And it implies like, we're not playing ball if, you know what I mean? And so he sent me all the stuff and we're writing it today actually. So, sometimes it's just knowing who your target audience is and telling them, target client and tell them what you want, tell them here's the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
Well, depending on your target market, and who you're dealing with, they respect that. Like you said, I mean, there's a level of like, if we want this game to change with how we're viewed in the industry, like we've got to do it. And the way that you do it is to, act like you're a trusted advisor and push it back on them, and say like, no, this isn't in your best interest. Like really, we need to be handling all of this. And that's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I, another example. So I had a investor reach out to me. This is about 2 months ago, and I just had a new producer start, brand new to the industry. And person reached out, "Hey, Bradley, you were recommended from such and such. I have a portfolio of properties, and I need you to quote this new one that I'm buying." And I replied, and I CC'd him on it, and I said, well, I don't remember her name. "Hey, Sally," I said, "that's awesome. Our agency specializes in real estate investors. That's like our jam. We have some tools that we give our investor clients that they really like. That's like the exact opposite of what everybody else does. We'd be happy to work on this for you. But that being said, typically we don't work with investor clients unless we're quoting the entire portfolio. So if you'd like to engage with us, that's what would need to happen." And I'm not saying that word for word. The actual email was a lot better. And she replied, and I BCC'd the new producer on it so he could see it. And I'm not being rude. I'm the expert, And so when you approach it that way, you almost flip the narrative. Instead of you wanting them to do business with you, they want to, you know what I'm saying? It's the other way around. All of a sudden it's like, "Ooh, this is like, it's like a privilege almost." Not that I wanted to think that, So she replied and said, "Okay, here's everything." And so I told the producer the next day, I said, "That's how you turn a $1,500 account into a $35,000 account."
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most people would be like, "Okay, yeah, I'll quote you. Would you mind if I get a shot on the other paw?" You know what I mean? Like that's how
if they ask it.
If they ask it. And I don't want to make, like, we're horrible at multi-lining, especially on personal lines, not so much on commercial. I don't want to sit here and talk about all these things and make you guys think I'm perfect, because we got issues and problems and all that kind of stuff. We are not perfect for sure. I just don't talk about anything that I'm not an expert in, or you know what I mean, like anything that we're, that sort of thing. So,
but that's always good for people to understand too. Is no company or agency is perfect at everything, and there's always going to be those things you want to do better.
Well, one problem with like thought leader culture we're in now is people try to be experts or sound like experts in things that they don't actually have knowledge or experience in. And that creates a problem. It's a huge issue. And so one thing about me is like, I'm never going to talk about anything that I'm not 100% sure that I have experience in, even if it's bad. And if someone asks me a question, like, for example, if you look at all of my content before January of 2019, I put out no content about hiring, firing, managing people, because I really didn't do it. And when I did do it, I was horrible at it. So that's one thing about me is it's the real thing. Like, I'm not going to sit here and like pontificate on a subject that I really don't know about. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Translating that to clients, Bradley, is also, I was having a conversation with a client this morning, and he started a business from scratch and similar to what we're doing. And I sympathized with him around, how difficult. He's like, "My systems are so jacked up." He's like, "I've got stuff scattered everywhere." And, his comment was, I'm just trying to grow this thing. And I mean, that's how we've all done it. It's like when you're a one-man band or a two-man shop, you don't run it like you have 250 employees like you should. Exactly. So, being able to relate to clients that are going through that can also be super beneficial in staying authentic and everything else that you were mentioning,
Absolutely. And figure out, value adds that you can give to your clients, for example, or your referral partners. I was telling a guy earlier today, I had one of the first lender referral partners that we picked up. This was when I was captive. I sat down with her at her conference table and I said, "Hey, is there anything business wise that I could help you with?" And she said, My SEO is terrible. I don't know anything about SEO. But I noticed that she didn't have a Google My Business page. You know, two business owners, even if they're at the same level, the same place in their business, there's going to be some things that one's done really well that they can help the other and vice versa. And she didn't have a Google My Business page. Well, I happen to know, which is the Google business listing when you search it, and it's got the reviews for those of you listening that don't know. And if you go from 0 Google My Business pages to 1 Google My Business page with like 3 or 4 reviews, Google rewards the crap out of you because they want you to be like, oh, wow, this works. I'm going to spend money on this, which that exact same thing happened to my brother-in-law a couple of weeks ago. And so I created her a Google My Business page, got her a few reviews. And a week later, she was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you did, but we've gotten like 3 or 4 phone calls and they're all from Google and they all put an application. So like, we didn't talk about insurance.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So like looking at ways that you can be that trusted advisor from a value add standpoint, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm looking, Troy Korsgaard has a book called Discussion Partner, which I highly recommend, that you want to be this like source of information for your client where they come to you for things like, hey, do you know a good mechanic, or do you know this? Like I'm traveling over here. Or do you recommend a restaurant? Like be that kind of source of knowledge. I think that can go a long way. One of my favorite stories to tell, and this is a true story. I rode back from a district meeting. For those of you that have been captive, remember those. I rode back from a district meeting with a guy who was a really good life insurance sales guy, and he was in the back seat and I was in the front seat, and another guy was driving, and he was like, hey guys, do you mind if I make some life insurance calls on the way back? We're like, no, sure. So he sat there for like an hour and a half and made phone calls to people and never brought up insurance once. It was, hey, how are you doing? How's your family doing? Never brought it up. And I said, man, let me ask you a question. Like, and I was really hardcore sales at the time, like Grant Cardone, like and I was like, let me ask you, why didn't you bring up life insurance once? He's like, I'm guaranteed by doing what I just did, I'm guaranteeing they always answer the phone.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to put it. Well, hey man, I think we're coming up on time, but there's a lot in there that I think everybody can not only take from, but we could keep going for hours on all this, but just a lot of stuff that I think it's important for everybody to think about. I like getting your perspective of you've been doing it over the last 3 years, building not only a company, but all of these things we're talking about, right? Target market and everything. So it's a great perspective, I think. So I appreciate it, man. I think it was fun and enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll see you soon at one of these events.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you guys. And if anybody needs anything, reach out to me.
Yeah, thanks, Bradley. Appreciate your time, man. Great talk.
Thank you for tuning in to Getting Past the Premium. We are excited to continue breaking down barriers and finding solutions together. If you would like to reach out regarding anything you heard in today's episode, find links and contact info in the description. Until next time, have a great day, and let's continue getting past the premium.